James Gunn just changed one of the most iconic parts of Superman's history. Instead of coming to Earth to protect humanity, his parents wanted him to conquer the planet and build his own harem. That twist should have made fans explode and accuse the director of betraying everything Superman stands for. But instead of being the most controversial scene in the movie, Gunn actually got everyone to approve this new origin. By moving away from the comics, he made his Superman feel more human than ever, gave him a real emotional journey, and delivered a truly inspiring version of the Man of Steel. Let's see how he pulled it off. During the first half of the movie, this new Superman is completely shaped by his parents' message, which is his only real connection to Krypton. Sure, he's got the Fortress, Krypto, the robots, and later even his cousin shows up. But Kara is never on Earth and doesn't get along with him. Krypto can't talk, and the robots in the Fortress don't know anything about Krypton. So everything Clark knows about his home planet comes from a glitchy message his parents left him. This is super important, because in every version, Clark's bond with his biological parents is key to him becoming a hero, just in different ways. In the Christopher Reeve movies, Jor-El tells his son he sent him to Earth so he could be a guiding light for humanity, like some kind of divine mission. In Smallville, Jor-El pretty much forces him to become Superman to carry on his Kryptonian legacy, while Jonathan wants him to embrace his humanity. And in Man of Steel, Clark decides to become a superhero only when the AI ghost of his dad tells him what his mission on Earth is. He doesn't put on the suit or call himself Superman until after he talks to his biological dad. I know he was already trying to save people before, but he only becomes a real symbol after Jor-El tells him he has to guide humanity.
You will give the people of Earth an ideal to strive towards, but in time, they will join you when the sun comes.
At first, Gunn's Superman feels like it's gonna go in a similar direction. Jor-El and Lara say they sent their son off Krypton because the planet was about to blow up, and they found a world where he could do good. The rest of the message got damaged, but as Clark later tells Lois, he took it to mean his parents wanted him to use his powers to help his new home. This is what inspires him to become Superman, and it's what holds up his entire moral system. It hits even harder than Jor-El's speech in Man of Steel, because here we don't even see Clark saving people before hearing the message. He's convinced he became Superman and a good person, because that's what his biological parents wanted for him. His whole sense of right and wrong comes from these two lines his parents told him. That's why he gets so upset when Lois tells him he should have thought twice about getting involved in the Baravian conflict, because his parents told him he had to do good no matter what. That's also why he's angry at the Justice Gang when they kill the kaiju by giving it indigestion, because he wants to protect all life to honor the mission his parents gave him. We'll find out soon enough that it's not really the case, but at this point in the film, that's what he believes. This gets reinforced during the interview at Lois's apartment. Clark hints that people can trust him because he was sent to Earth with the mission to help people, so he doesn't have any hidden agenda. That message is one of the reasons why people all over the world believe in him, but at the same time, it's why they call him an alien. Clark's been open about this from the start, and doesn't feel ashamed of being Kryptonian, but Gunn uses Superman's backstory to dig deeper into his character.
Is that so?
He's not labeled an alien just because he literally is a refugee from another planet, and it's not directly tied to his powers either. Everyone sees him as an alien because he's an outside force that showed up to save humanity, almost like it was forced on them. It fits with the religious messiah-like version of Superman we've seen in a bunch of other adaptations, like in Man of Steel. That's why Lex calls him Venusian in the third act, and why he hates the name Superman. To Luthor, he's not human at all, and doesn't deserve to be called a man. This whole idea of the Man of Steel completely shatters halfway through the movie, when Lex reveals the second half of the message Clark had never heard. Turns out, Jor-El and Lara's idea of doing good was that their son should conquer Earth and wipe out anyone who tried to resist. Before you say maybe Lex or Brainiac tampered with the message, Lex himself admits in a conversation with Burkos that the message is real. He didn't have to change anything to make Superman look bad. Plus, Gunn even said on the Happy Sad Confused podcast that the message is real and he's not planning to retcon it. He took inspiration from John Byrne's Man of Steel, where Jor-El and Lara are cold calculating scientists who see humans as inferior beings. Of course, Lara doesn't go as far as saying their son should have his own harem, but it's crystal clear that Clark only became Superman because of how he was raised on Earth, not because of his biological parents' wishes. Keep this in mind, because it's key to understanding Gunn's take on the character.
It's not an S. On my world, it means 666.
Once everyone hears the message, Superman's public image is completely trashed. People stop seeing him as a savior messiah and start seeing him as a would-be tyrant who wants to destroy humanity and have a harem bigger than Jimmy Olsen's. People are about 5 minutes away from demanding he leaves Earth. But the biggest thing for the movie, and for Gunn's message, is that Clark's entire moral system falls apart because he realizes his whole life has been a lie. After rescuing Krypto and escaping Luthor's pocket universe, Clark goes back to Smallville with his tail between his legs. Once he recovers, he admits to Jonathan that he doesn't know what to do because Jor-El and Lara sent him to Earth to hurt people, not protect them. This is my favorite scene in the whole film because Clark says out loud that he doesn't even know if he should keep being a superhero. Up until that point, he'd just been following someone else's wishes. But now, he has to choose for himself. Jonathan, who's his real dad because he's the one who raised him, tells him the content of that message doesn't really matter. A parent's job isn't to define their kids, but to give them tools to decide for themselves. This means Clark has to figure out what kind of person he wants to be. And if he doesn't want to be a dictator because he thinks that's a terrible idea, then his biological parents' message doesn't define him, and it never did. The truth is, he chose to become Superman because he believed it was the right thing to do, thanks to growing up in Kansas and the values his adoptive parents taught him. Maybe Gunn's Kryptonians are even more ruthless than Burns, but the core message is really close to Superman's origin in Man of Steel.
It's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
This scene also mirrors the end of Guardians 2, when Yondu tells Star-Lord that he might not be his biological father, but he's the one who raised him. For Gunn, parenting is way more important than genetics, blood, or destiny. This might be the most controversial part of the origin change, because there are writers like Mark Miller who say Superman would be a good person no matter how he was raised. In Red Son, the rocket lands in the Soviet Union, which was basically the complete opposite of the US. But even if he takes away people's freedoms every now and then, Superman is still a good guy in that comic. According to Miller, Superman's morality is built into his nature, so he works as a sort of force for good. But there are other stories, like the Dark Side, where Superman starts out as a villain because he was raised by Darkseid in Apocalypse. That comic shows how important the environment is for a kid's development, especially if that kid is one of the most powerful beings in the universe. Gunn leans into the second approach, making it clear that Clark has nothing in common with his biological parents, who expected him to be an even worse tyrant than the one in Injustice. I mean, just look at the guy. Clark is basically a reflection of his adoptive parents because his whole personality comes from Jonathan and Martha. Gunn chose to make them simple, small-town farmers who aren't great with technology, since that's what the director grew up seeing as a kid. In a really subtle way, we see that this rubbed off on Clark. Sure, he knows how to use a phone and doesn't call the TV a box, but during his interview with Lois, he says Superman doesn't have time to check social media or take selfies. Like he's a little bit of a boomer. He got that from his adoptive parents, because growing up in Smallville, he probably didn't spend much time around tech. If Clark's personality were based on genetics, he should be fascinated by all the latest technology, since Krypton was way more advanced than Earth.
We have technology.
On top of that, when he shows up at the planet, we see how hard it is for him to adjust to the fast-paced life of Metropolis, because he's used to the calm of the countryside, just like his dad. This shows up in other versions too, like in Jeff Loeb's For All Seasons, where his dad tells him he'll never get tired of watching the sunset on the farm. But by turning Jor-El and Lara into supervillains, the contrast between them and Clark is way stronger, settling the whole debate that Clark's real parents are the Kents. But that's not all, because this change to Superman's origin also makes him way more human. After his talk with Jonathan, Clark gives up on his Kryptonian heritage and embraces his Kansas upbringing. He doesn't say it outright because that would have been too on the nose. But just like Invincible at the end of season 1, Clark walks away from his biological parents because he values the way he was raised on Earth so much more. I know there are more connections to Kirkman's comic, but I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it. What matters is that Superman stops being seen as an alien like at the start of the movie, and is now viewed as fully human, at least in people's eyes. He already had some human traits earlier, like when he argues with Lois, or when he interacts with his dog, but everything that defines him after this moment comes from his adoptive parents. Superman can't exactly say this out loud because it would put his parents in danger, but it's clear that people accept him as one of their own.
One of us. One of us.
It's no coincidence that everyone forgives him the moment they see him saving Metropolis from the dimensional rift created by Luthor. By the third act, nobody cares why Superman was sent to Earth, what his real origins are, or what his parents' message said. What matters is that Superman sees Earth as his true home and genuinely wants to help people. He stops being a refugee and is finally accepted as just another human. The only one who still calls him alien is Lex, because he hates him with every fiber of his being. This shift from alien to human gives weight to the scene where Superman tells Lex he doesn't see himself as an alien, but as human as anyone else. He feels fear, gets angry, and makes mistakes. But every day he puts one foot in front of the other to keep going, just like people everywhere in the world. This speech wouldn't make any sense if Clark was destined to be Superman because of his parents' message, because none of us were born destined to be anyone special. None of us were sent to another planet to fulfill some kind of divine mission. But we can relate to someone who does the right thing, just because they feel it's the right thing to do, not because destiny told them to. It's the most inspiring moment in the whole movie, because Gunn makes us believe we can all be better people, even though no one outright says it. If Superman was sent to Earth to be a conqueror, but chose to be a superhero, then all of us can try to be a little better. We can all decide to do the right thing, no matter what others tell us, just like he did. And even if your own parents tell you to be bad, that doesn't have to define you.
And that's my greatest strength.
We can apply this idea to everyday life, like not taking the same job as your parents if you don't want to, or not blindly following what they tell you if it doesn't feel right. This message and its final moral wouldn't even exist if not for the origin change Gunn made. And if you're still not convinced, Clark's newfound humanity is crystal clear in the final scene, when the robots in the fortress replay the message from Superman's parents. But instead of listening to Jor-El and Lara's orders, Superman watches videos of his childhood with Jonathan and Martha. They're the ones who actually inspired him to be Superman, because they let him choose. They never told him he was going to be a hero, or that he was destined for greatness. The love of two parents was enough to make Superman decide to be a good person, completely the opposite of what his biological parents wanted. Of course, this wasn't the only change Gunn made to fix how a lot of people saw Superman. In this video, I go over 3 other big changes in the new movie that made the Man of Steel more popular than ever.
Bye-bye now.